Welcome back to Zodiac Talks Tarot, the space where we don't skim over horoscopes like fortune cookies but instead dive into them as if they were chapters of an epic novel, full of symbolism, psychology, and just enough humor to remind us that life is not all solemn meditation. Today we turn our gaze towards Sagittarius, that fiery wanderer who forever insists that freedom is not a luxury but a birthright. You, Sagittarius, are the eternal student of the stars, philosopher of freedom, and yes, let's admit it, the reckless champion of impulsive midnight Amazon splurges that you later justify as investments in self-discovery. You were never meant for cages or quiet compromises. Adventure, truth, and possibility are your natural fuel, and as we step into the very first week of October 2025, the universe is not sending you a polite email reminder but thrusting a blazing torch into your hands and telling you to walk forward. The energy of this week is not subtle. It arrives as a charge under the skin, that curious hum you feel before your mind even catches up, the kind of shift that tells you something more profound is on the horizon. For some zodiac signs, this stretch of days might simply look like financial opportunity, but for you it is much bigger. This is about the rewiring of your entire relationship with abundance, money, yes, but also worth, purpose, and the stories you've told yourself about what you're allowed to receive. Your ruling planet, Jupiter, is often described as the great cosmic giver, the Santa Claus of the heavens, but this week Jupiter is not delivering cheap toys from the clearance bin. Instead, it aligns with Pluto, the heavyweight master of transformation, and that is no small partnership. Imagine Santa Claus arriving at your house not with elves but with a demolition crew smiling warmly as they bless your kitchen while knocking down the walls that have long kept you cramped. It sounds dramatic, but Pluto doesn't deal in half measures. And if you're wondering whether this is random coincidence, it isn't. You are here, listening, because you were meant to be. Call it karma, intuition, or the odd brilliance of the universe's algorithm, but you have landed in this message right on schedule. And as for the phrase chosen ones, let's set the record straight, it's not a secret society. It is simply the title given to those who finally stop doubting the call they've been hearing and dare to step into it. This week, Sagittarius, the torch is in your hand. What you do with it will shape the path ahead. From October 1st to 7, Sagittarius steps into a rare alignment that feels less like a polite cosmic suggestion and more like the sound of a lock clicking open on a long-shut door. Jupiter, your ruling planet of expansion and generosity, is moving into a harmonious trine with Pluto, the uncompromising agent of transformation. When these two meet, it is not about tweaking the edges of your life. It is about dissolving the barriers that you thought were immovable. Imagine yourself standing behind a massive dam, watching as years of effort, frustration, hope, and whispered prayers pool into a reservoir. You've felt the water pressing, you've wondered why nothing flowed, and maybe you even questioned whether the river had dried up entirely. But now you hear it, the crack, the shift, the beginning of release. This is not water rushing in to sweep you away. This is water finally rushing toward you, bringing what was always yours but delayed by timing, by fear, or by the unfinished chapters of your own growth. Astrologers call this a reset window, and while that sounds technical, the truth is you don't need charts or terminology to know it's real. You've already sensed it. That restless vibration under your skin, that subtle hum in your bones, is not paranoia, it's intuition. It's the part of you that knows when change is near, even before your mind can rationalize it. If you've ever had the sense that life was preparing you for something just out of sight, this week may very well be the unveiling. Now, before you go packing your bags for Las Vegas and shouting, "The stars told me to double down on red," let's pause. Yes, finances are in the spotlight, but money is only the outer costume of abundance. The deeper play is about your relationship with receiving, with value, with permission to want more than survival. Sagittarians often inherit complicated stories about money. Maybe you grew up in a family where dreaming too big was branded as arrogance, where wanting more meant you were ungrateful, where sacrifice was applauded and desire was shamed. Perhaps you learned to dim your ambitions to avoid conflict, or you carried guilt for wanting a life larger than the script others handed you. But Pluto, the planet of truth and transformation, is famously allergic to illusions. Under this alignment, you are asked to step back and examine these inherited scripts. Do they still serve you, or are they relics of another era, stories never truly yours? From the lens of Buddhist teaching, holding on to such outdated beliefs is like clutching a burning coal. It does not scorch the people who placed it in your hand. It scorches you. The spiritual lesson now is not to curse the coal or the givers, but to recognize that release is both possible and necessary. You can simply put it down. This timing is no accident. The fact that Jupiter trines Pluto during the year of Triumph 2025 is significant. Triumph for Sagittarius this year has never been about confetti cannons or parades. It is about courage, quiet, deliberate courage. It is about seeing freedom not as a reckless escape, but as a conscious choice, a lifestyle built intentionally. You are being asked to bet on yourself, not in the casino sense, but in the sense of making steady, brave investments in your own expansion. And here is the paradox: triumph rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with neon lights or a soundtrack. More often, it sneaks in when you stop bargaining with fear, when you stop postponing your future by waiting for the perfect conditions. Waiting for the right time can be a clever disguise for stalling. The right time is often the moment you decide it is. So yes, during this first week of October you may find financial blessings, a promotion, an unexpected offer, a creative idea finally ripening into profit. But don't confuse the gift with the lesson. Beneath the money, beneath the opportunities, the deeper teaching is simple: you are allowed to receive. You don't need to earn abundance by bleeding for it. You don't need to prove your worth by overextending yourself. You are permitted to hold open hands without apology. Psychology calls this receiving without resistance, and it can be surprisingly difficult. Sagittarius thrives on effort, risk, and adventure. You like to chase, to conquer, to declare victory at the summit. But what happens when the universe asks you not to chase, but to welcome? That is the true test of this alignment. Can you sit, not with clenched fists but with open palms, and allow good things to arrive without suspicion? Can you trust that ease is not laziness, that grace is not a trap, that blessings are not bait? And maybe here is where humor saves you. Because, Sagittarius, if you take yourself too seriously, you'll miss the joke the universe is playing. Picture it: Jupiter shows up at your door dressed as Santa Claus, and Pluto strolls in behind him with a wrecking ball. They're smiling, they're friendly, but they've come to renovate, not decorate. It's absurd, it's dramatic, and yet it's exactly the kind of divine comedy that changes lives. This is the week where you practice release, not by abandoning responsibility, but by letting go of the ancient belief that suffering is the only path to growth. This is the week where you remind yourself that triumph does not have to roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it simply waits for you to say, "Yes, I am ready." So as October begins, carry this truth with you: abundance is not only what you earn, it is what you allow. Money is a piece of it, but not the whole. True abundance is found in freedom of time, clarity of purpose, generosity of spirit, and the quiet dignity of ease. And this week, the dam is breaking. Not to sweep you under, but to let the waters finally reach you. The psychology of receiving has always fascinated me, perhaps because it is the invisible thread that links astrology, social behavior, and the subtle workings of the human mind. When we speak of Sagittarius in this moment, from the vantage point of early October 2025, we are not merely talking about career prospects, financial shifts, or astrological windows of luck. We are talking about the deeper question of why so many people, Sagittarians included, resist good things even when those very blessings are knocking on the door. The answer is both simple and uncomfortable. Receiving requires vulnerability. To receive is to admit you are worthy without having earned it in sweat and fire, without proving yourself through exhausting effort or heroic undertakings. For a sign that thrives on adventure, discovery, and audacious risk, the image of simply sitting still with open palms can feel less like peace and more like punishment. Many Sagittarians would rather climb Everest in flip-flops than quietly wait for abundance to arrive without a chase. Yet this is the paradox: the universe is saying, stop running. Sit down. Open your hands. This is not surrender in the weak sense, it is bravery in its purest form. In Buddhist teaching, wealth is not accumulation but restoration. True wealth is the capacity to rest without guilt, to give without depletion, and to live without fear as a constant backseat driver. This is where astrology and psychology overlap. Both disciplines remind us that abundance is not just a paycheck or a bank balance, but a state of relationship with self, with others, and with the world. And this week, Sagittarius, the stars offer you not only money but the dignity of ease, the gift of exhaling without apology. Think of it less as winning the lottery and more as finally learning to enjoy the sunlight on your skin without asking whether you've earned it. In tarot, the card that reflects this moment is the Chariot. On the surface, it is a card of forward motion, decisive movement, triumph over obstacles. But here's the twist that matters for you now: the Chariot is not about speed, it is about alignment. For Sagittarius, the compass you are asked to follow is not external. It is not in spreadsheets, contracts, or even in the advice of well-meaning friends. It is inside you: the gut feelings, the quiet nudges, the sudden yes that rises in your chest before your brain has time to file an objection. Yes, your intuition sometimes behaves like a drunk GPS turning left when you swore it meant right, but in this week it sharpens. The signals are clearer. And here is where psychology plays its part again. Intuition is rarely random. It is often your subconscious drawing upon layers of experience, memory, and perception that your conscious mind cannot catalog. When opportunities come this week, they may not arrive with trumpets. They may appear as subtle invitations, as small ideas whispered in quiet moments, or as conversations you almost brush aside. Trust them. Not every leap requires a business plan, Sagittarius. Sometimes, the leap is the plan. Creativity, too, becomes currency now. Sagittarius, you are blessed with a natural gift for storytelling, for connecting dots that others miss, for pulling meaning from unlikely intersections of life. Whether you are an artist, a teacher, a traveler, or even working in the heart of corporate strategy, your strength this week lies in ideas that feel alive. Remember that money is not only earned, it is magnetized. And your magnet right now is creativity. That half-dismissed idea you thought was frivolous? Write it down. That conversation you've been avoiding because it felt awkward? Have it. That quirky project that seemed too silly to take seriously? Try it. Some of the greatest Sagittarian breakthroughs in history have not been the result of meticulous planning but of playful experimentation. The archer is at their best not when standing still and measuring endlessly, but when drawing the bowstring, trusting the target, and releasing with faith. Psychology, again, gives us the evidence for this. Novelty sparks dopamine. Trying something new does more than attract external opportunities, it rewires your inner system of motivation. That restless hum you feel as October begins is not boredom, it is your mind craving renewal. It is the soul's way of saying, let's stop running in circles and try a new path. Novelty is not indulgence, it is medicine. Think of it as spring cleaning for the brain, or as an astrological upgrade to your internal operating system. And here is where a touch of humor might serve you well. Sagittarius, if you find yourself obsessing over whether your creative experiment is practical enough, remember this: most people thought starting a company to sell bottled water was a ridiculous idea. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So if your creative spark involves painting maps for imaginary cities, writing travel blogs for places no one visits, or teaching a yoga class for dogs, don't dismiss it out of hand. Stranger ideas have paid the bills. The point is not that every quirky thought will make you rich, but that dismissing them all ensures you never discover which ones might. Ultimately, this week is about learning to receive without armor, to trust your inner compass even when it sounds improbable, and to recognize creativity as both a gift and a form of currency. You are not being asked to abandon adventure, Sagittarius. You are being asked to see that sometimes the most heroic act is not the climb, but the stillness. Sometimes bravery looks like allowing goodness to land in your lap without chasing it into exhaustion. Sometimes the arrow does not need more force, it only needs release. And if you can embrace that truth during this alignment, you will find that abundance has been circling you for years, waiting for the moment when you finally decide you are ready to say yes. Let's pause here and take a breath, because Sagittarius, I know you too well. Half of you is already Googling how to start a side hustle in 5 minutes while the other half is daydreaming about moving to Bali to write a travel blog. You are the Zodiac's restless archer, always looking for the next adventure, the next scheme, the next great leap. But here's the truth: Rome wasn't built in a week, and the cosmos is certainly not asking you to rebuild it this week. What you're being invited to do is subtler and, dare I say, wiser. Think of this moment less as tearing down the house and more as rearranging the mental furniture. You don't need to demolish your entire structure. You simply need to stop tripping over the same old couch of doubt you keep shoving into the middle of your psychic living room. And since humor is one of your secret medicines, let's stretch it a little further. When Jupiter shakes hands with Pluto, even your questionable $8 a day coffee habit can turn into a business plan. Just imagine the brand: Sagittarius roast, bold, unpredictable, and prone to oversharing. Would people buy it? Probably. Stranger ventures have turned into empires, and let's face it, the idea of a coffee that comes with unsolicited life advice would be right on brand for you. Humor aside, this is the reminder: stop overthinking whether every spark of inspiration is serious enough. Play with it. Test it. Some of your most successful moments will come not from rigid plans but from experiments you almost dismissed as silly. Still, let's not forget that fire, without a container, burns out quickly. You can be dazzlingly creative, Sagittarius, but if you don't have structure, that wealth of ideas and even actual wealth slips through your fingers like sand. This is why grounding becomes essential. One of the simplest yet most powerful tools is the 50-30-20 principle. Allocate half for essentials, the things that keep you rooted and functional. Let 30% feed your joy, your growth, those spontaneous Sagittarian road trips that teach you more about philosophy than any lecture hall. And the last 20? Send it towards savings and investments, even if the amounts feel small. Trust me, future you will raise a glass in gratitude to present you for building the scaffolding of freedom. This isn't about restriction. It's about freedom with form. Remember, you cannot launch an arrow without a bow. Structure is your bow, Sagittarius, and the arrow won't fly without it. Now let's talk about something most people underestimate: gratitude. Psychology and spiritual practice, East and West, both agree on this point: gratitude is the frequency of abundance. Every time money comes to you, whether it's your paycheck, a gift, a surprise discount at the store, or even just the loose change you find in a pocket, pause. Whisper to yourself, I am worthy. I receive with thanks. You might laugh at the simplicity of it, but here's the science: small rituals rewire your nervous system. They teach your body and mind that wealth is not a trickster out to betray you. It's not foreign, not dangerous. It is a safe and welcome ally. Sagittarius, this matters because your restless fire sometimes leads you to chase so hard that you forget to notice what you've already caught. Practicing gratitude interrupts that cycle. It stops the endless sprint toward more, and it reminds you that receiving is not a crime. You don't need to perform heroic acts to justify good fortune. Sometimes you just need to notice the goodness, name it, and let it stay. Here's where Buddhist teaching adds its quiet wisdom. Gratitude is not only about saying thank you, it is about shifting the entire posture of your life from scarcity to sufficiency. It's about standing in the middle of your day and recognizing that wealth is not just the currency in your wallet but the air you breathe, the relationships that sustain you, and the small freedoms you often overlook. And from that perspective, even something as ordinary as a morning coffee, yes, even the $8 one, becomes a sacred reminder that life is generous when you are present enough to notice. So this week, Sagittarius, don't pressure yourself to leap mountains. Rearrange your inner furniture. Laugh at your own habits. Build the container that will hold your fire. And above all, practice gratitude, not as a forced performance but as a quiet rhythm, a way of tuning your life to abundance. Because when you learn to pair humor with structure, and gratitude with action, you stop chasing wealth like a skittish animal and start magnetizing it like a seasoned archer drawing back the bow, steady and sure. Generosity is one of those curious paradoxes that psychology, philosophy, and even astrology all agree on: the more you give, the more you seem to expand. But there is a caveat, one that people often miss: true generosity has to come from overflow, not depletion. Giving from a place of exhaustion is not noble, it is simply self-sabotage with a halo on top. Sagittarius, your fiery nature sometimes makes you overextend. You'll volunteer for every cause, buy gifts you can't quite afford, or say yes when your inner compass is begging for a pause. But this week, the lesson is subtler. It is about generosity that flows naturally, like a river fed by rain. Even small acts, a tip given with joy instead of obligation, a moment spent helping a friend without keeping score, or supporting a cause that stirs your heart, these are the gestures that circulate abundance. Money, like breath, suffocates when hoarded. It thrives when flowing. Think of it this way: no one tries to store oxygen in their pockets. We breathe it in, we breathe it out, and that cycle is what keeps us alive. Wealth, both financial and spiritual, works in the same rhythm. Now let's zoom out, because October 1st through 7 is not just another ordinary week scribbled on the calendar. It is a threshold, a symbolic crossing from survival into expansion. The storm of wealth that you may feel building is not chaos meant to disrupt you, it is cleansing, rinsing away the dust of self-doubt and those old fears that whispered you weren't ready. The cosmos is not punishing you, Sagittarius, it's inviting you to shed the armor you've worn for too long. You were not built to fear money. You were not designed to delay freedom until every variable was perfect. You were made to move, to stretch, to explore horizons others only dream of. Ask yourself honestly, if nothing changes, where will you be 5 years from now? What will your mornings look like, your choices, your sense of freedom? And if that vision feels too small, too cramped for the size of your spirit, then this is your moment. The Year of Triumph 2025 is not a slogan, it is a crossroads. It is the year that asks you, gently but firmly, to bet on yourself. Not in reckless gambling, but in conscious declaration. This is when you look life in the eye and say, I choose abundance. I release lack. I am ready to receive. And if saying that aloud feels a little silly, good. Humor keeps the ego from turning declarations into dogma. Besides, Sagittarians have always known that laughter is its own kind of sacred prayer. So here it is, Sagittarius, the first week of October is your portal. The universe does not demand perfection from you, only presence. And when a Sagittarius is truly present, the world tends to unfold in astonishing ways. Doors open, conversations align, and paths that once felt blocked suddenly reveal detours paved with possibility. This is why you must pack your bags not for escape, but for expansion. The adventure you crave is not waiting on a distant mountaintop or in some exotic city. It is already arriving within you, reshaping your relationship with money, with value, and with freedom itself. Let me leave you with this reflection. Generosity and gratitude are not chores, they are instruments. When you use them well, they tune your life into harmony with abundance. Structure, like the bow of your arrow, gives direction. Creativity, like the flight of that arrow, adds beauty to the trajectory. And presence, your ability to stand in this moment without waiting for better conditions, is the hand that releases the string. This is not about rushing, but about aligning. Not about hoarding, but about flowing. Not about waiting to be worthy, but about remembering you always were. So as October begins, step boldly into your new legacy. Let generosity keep the river of abundance alive, let gratitude magnetize every blessing, and let courage remind you that you were not made to play small. You were born to move, to expand, to live with the kind of freedom that inspires others to loosen their own chains. And before you go, remember this: life is not meant to be endured, it is meant to be enjoyed. So Sagittarius, laugh a little louder, love a little wider, and let yourself savor the ride. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, comment, and subscribe to my channel, Zodiac Talks Tarot, so that together we can continue exploring the wisdom of the stars, the humor of human nature, and the quiet courage it takes to live abundantly. Because your next adventure isn't waiting somewhere far away, it's unfolding right here, right now, within you.